Hey, Strong Girls. I'm Molly Herford, sports journalist, ultra runner, cyclist, and author, and founder of Strong Girl Publishing.
And I'm Dr. Sasha Golish, Executive Director of Yellow Running Shoes, a researcher, engineer, elite runner, and your BFF who's breaking down the science of smashing barriers in women's sports.
Think of us as the intersection of science and culture for women and girls in sport. Each week, we'll dissect the latest headlines and cutting-edge research on female athletes.
Debunk myths about girls in sport. Talk about how hormones affect performance at every age, to the latest research in sports science around mental performance, nutrition, equipment, and so much more.
And we'll spotlight badass girls and women who are rewriting the rules of the game, sometimes literally.
Expect it to be nerdy.
And occasionally TMI.
But it will always be honest.
Whether you're a strong girl yourself or you're raising one, this show is for you. Welcome to Strong Girl Talk,
where sports science meets sisterhood.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Strong Girl Talk. Sasha, as always, so lovely to see you.
So great to see you. Bringing my bunny. That's right. Bringing my chocolate bunny. It's chocolate bunny time. It's Passover time, which is chocolate matzah time.
It's like, yeah, it's chocolate bunny season. That's probably the most inclusive way we can say that. Yeah. Although, you know what? I just said before we started recording, I am a Reese's Eggs person. I'm a Reese's any of their holiday shapes. So trees, hearts, what else do they have? Pumpkins now. I'm really upset actually because Easter is the end of Reese's holiday things until Halloween. So there's a
Really?
6-month. There's no summer holiday that would necessitate a
we're
large
gonna have
Reese's
to connect
size.
with them.
I know. I'm
we need a
firework.
Yeah. Because beach umbrella.
Yeah.
Beach towel.
Clearly, the Reese's shapes are superior to regular Reese's. This is just science. I
agreed.
Yeah.
So,
I buy in bulk. I'm not gonna lie. And
define bulk.
Oh, if I see them in the store, I will buy they come in sets of 6, the full size Reese's eggs.
Yeah.
I will buy 10 of those.
Yeah. That's the appropriate amount.
Hundreds of dollars I have spent on Reese's. Other people buy fancy chocolate or, good coffee or good wine. I just stock up on Reese's when they're in that shape. But I ate them all already. So I need to go scour the clearance aisles of all of the grocery stores because I'm out and I'm upset.
As you should be. I mean,
that is my life update.
One should never be out of Reese's product. I am a huge fan. But okay, so hang on. So I'm also a fan of the King Cup and the filled King Cup with the Reese's Pieces in it. And how do you feel about those?
I mean, they're good, but they just do not match the superiority of just the chocolate to peanut butter ratio. And also, I have not confirmed this. Apologies if I'm wrong. I think the sodium content is actually higher in the eggs and other holiday shapes than it is in the regular ones. So they're just that teensy bit saltier, which I love. Because I will salt other regular Reese's.
Yeah.
I will actually sprinkle some salt on them.
Yeah.
Like a monster. Like an endurance athlete. That's what I meant to say. Like an endurance athlete.
Nutrition tips brought to you today by Sasha and Molly.
And Reese's, if they want to sponsor us, please get in touch.
Okay. So that is my go-to snack on endurance training. It was always I always Nordic skied in the Solomon vest. Anyways, just be careful. Don't leave the vest on the ground. Should there be an extra Reese's cup? Because we both have dogs and it's the
Yeah,
there's something in there that I want to eat. And it's but you can't eat the package. You probably shouldn't eat the chocolate. It's not dark chocolate. It won't really kill you. But this is generally not good for you. Good for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm mourning the end of the Reese's Egg season, but I am getting excited because book 4 of the Shred Girl series, Lindsay and the Curse of Gemini Lakes, is coming out in just over a month, and our launch party is the weekend of May 31st, June 1st. You're going to be there. We're now talking about some parent tracks for the parents of the girls that are there. So it is going to be such a good time, an educational time, a fun time, a very summer camp vibe time. I'm stoked.
I'm stoked. Summer camp was the best time of my life. Best time of my life ever. I'm just looking at my pile of books from you. So I have two Shred Girls books. I'm gonna have to go buy the other one. I need to read these before the fourth book comes out.
I mean, I'll bring them down to you when we get to
Oh
record in
yeah.
real life pretty soon here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Gonna see you soon. I can't
yeah,
wait.
yeah, ditto, ditto. So yeah, we'll put a link to that in the show notes if anyone is around. It's gonna be at Mansfield Outdoor Center, and yeah, it's gonna be super fun. Very inspired by book four, which is very summer camp themed. So it's gonna be a lot of good stuff. But let's get on to what's going on in the wide world of sport here today,
Monday. I mean,
Monday.
I know, yes, this is coming out on Friday. It's Monday. It's Boston Marathon Monday. Um, you didn't watch it. I,
I
of
did not
course,
watch it. I'm
I
so
was glued.
sorry.
I was glued to my television from the moment that the men's wheelchair race started at 9:03, and then the women's, I think, was 9:07. The men started at 9:37, the women, the elite women at 9:47, and the masses at 10 o'clock. That's right, Molly. Glued to my television. The all the races were amazing. Just like so amazing to watch. So I'm gonna actually start with the wheeled races. Marcel Hug, because and it's like Hug, but I'm like, your last name is Hug, so you're a Hug. 37. People would say he's past his prime. It's his eighth win on the Boston course. Um, why can I not think of her first name? Cerrone. Oh my God, what is her first name? She won. So this is her, I think, third or fourth win. Anyway, she missed last. So she won 2 years ago with a like full blown mechanical, like with her wheel almost falling off. Still won. Won this year, missed last year because she got in a accident. Somebody hit her just before the race and she didn't get to race. So it was so amazing to see her like not only return to Boston, but just like have a great day. And it was
Oh, okay.
sunny. Yeah,
Question.
yeah.
Wheelchair, during the wheelchair race, are they allowed to have mechanics on course? Like, I'm just thinking about like in a bike race, you'd have pits, so like aid stations where obviously the people have mechanics in the wings. I'm curious if during the wheelchair race there actually are mechanics on course that would be able to help. And if
You
not,
have to be self-sufficient. So we watched her fix her chair. It was just like one of these like unbelievably cool moments. I met her once upon a time at the Chula Vista Training Center. She is also a delicious coffee snob. Yeah, it was really powerful to see her back out there. Her friend and teammate Tatiana McFadden was not there this year because also was just recently in an accident. So this is not a road safety podcast, but sometimes it's a road safety podcast.
yeah, yeah, sometimes it needs to be.
Yeah. So,
It's actually interesting. I was just at Sea Otter. I was talking to a friend of mine who does some work with the Kelly Brush Foundation. So they're a US nonprofit that helps people get adaptive sporting equipment. So a lot of wheelchair like wheelchairs that are actually more designed for running, obviously. And such a cool thing that they're doing, especially with sort of, all of the rollbacks to disability care and benefits and all that kind of stuff that's starting to go on in the US. That's, a really scary time. So it's great to see organizations like that that actually are supporting, helping, people have access to sport because as we talked about, it is in fact a human right, not just a fun thing to do.
sport is a human right. And to your point, disability sport is typically way more expensive, right? There's different equipment, there's different needs, and, highlighting the Boston Marathon for all the great work that they do and highlighting their para athletes. Like the wheeled race was covered and looked like, I mean, I didn't time the minutes, but like balanced coverage between like the men and the women this morning. It was, yeah. And then at one point, all four screens were going, and I was like, this is the best uninterrupted flow track coverage. So thanks, Flo. Although I have a gripe with you, but we'll get to that later. But great coverage, balanced coverage with Kara Goucher this morning. I don't remember who was Paul was commentating alongside. Anyways, Kara, great job once again. Um, I listened to Kara and Des their podcast before Boston. Kara the crier. Kara's like, I'm a crier. She did a great job holding it together today. 2 hours before the race. I don't know that I'll hold it together. Des announced her retirement from professional marathon running. Hmm.
Okay, what a wild move to do. Like, just think about the headspace and the
Yeah.
mentality of doing that, like, kind of knowing that you're making this announcement that's going to be met with, I mean, you're in tears. Like, imagine how she would have felt like putting that out there and kind of knowing that there'd be like such a public reaction to it, while also then, like, lining up for a marathon. And then like that, doesn't that put a lot of like it, pressure on the marathon in kind of a wild way? Like you want, even if it doesn't go well, you still want it to be your goodbye to the sport, and you've now announced publicly that it's your goodbye to the sport. So,
Yeah.
oh boy, good. I mean, good on her. But that seems horrifying.
Oh my gosh, horrifying. And you could see on the start line that she was teary. You know, it's the last time that she's gonna stand there. Although, can we just like Des for starter? Can we just have Des for starter next year? Um, but the races were awesome. So Des in the end ended up finishing 17th, 226, 17th. Like that was a field. And it was I mean, the women's race, the men's race blew up around, I don't know, 20K or no, 20 miles, sorry, with at 30K. John Career, younger brother of Wesley Career, 2012 winner. So the first time two siblings have won. Took off at 30K, but in the women's race, like it was a race until a mile to go. And it looked like Helen O'Berry was going to get her third win in a row. And Sharon Lokedi just went, not today. And when Helen made her move at a mile, Sharon just shut it down. Yeah.
Love
She
it.
broke the record. So she ran 217. Sharon broke the record. And the first thing she did was like, that's my Helen, that's my training partner. Like all the love in the world to her. Like we do this together. Jess McLean was the top American. She was sixth or seventh. I can't remember. She was catching the British girl who just, I was like, oh my gosh, you just want this race to end. Your legs are just done. And then all the American women waited for Des to finish, right? And like the bow down to her, like, we're not worthy. And it was just, it was so special to watch. Um, yeah.
I
But
love it.
Des, I'm pretty sure that you're now going after the ultra distances. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. So Des is the 50K world record. Um, Currently Camille Herron, I think, owns many of those world and American records. Um,
I'd be
Period there.
nervous if I were her. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Des is like, okay, not onwards, like not next, but a little bit like before my career ends, there's a couple things that I want to tackle and take on, and I'm really excited for this next step. There was like no hint of it in their in the podcast that they recorded before Boston, so I was like, this caught me by surprise this morning, but I was like, ah, what a race.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then before we get to cycling, you mentioned Nikki Hilt's Instagram video. Tell us what it was. What's going on?
Well, and then also credit to Fast Women. So I didn't really follow the story a ton. I followed what Fast Women and Allison Wade was posting and Nikki Hiltz. And so I guess there's a sports company called XXXY. Can't quote you on that. Basically, a clothing brand that is quotation marks protect women's sport. And they go ahead. Like,
Just
yeah, you're like, I was like, oh, cringeworthy, cringeworthy. And they had a shakeout run and to celebrate protecting women's sport, which I found challenging. And they show this interview of this woman saying, you know, I was robbed of a spot. And Nikki Hiltz, they are amazing, was like, oh, did you go from 900th to 901st? Because I'm pretty sure that the trans women finishing in front of you wasn't the reason you needed to drop out of Boston. I mean, I did post on my Instagram, like, hey, you can drop out of Boston. Like, a marathon is a really long way to go. Like, as a marathoner, let me just say, if you don't want to run that far, feel free to drop out. But, you know, such an important point. Like, trans women are not taking away from women's sport and they're not, you know, robbing people of places, and you don't need to drop out because there's a trans woman. Like what you need to do, trans man, trans woman, non-binary, gender diverse, you know, like Nikki reminds us, is you need to celebrate everybody running because it's about the community and getting from the start line to the finish line together, mostly in a positive way, and helping each other when you get to those dark moments because every marathon has a dark moment.
for sure. Or like, I mean, at bare minimum, celebrating yourself and your time.
Yeah.
Like having, yeah, being like one spot further back, honestly, frankly, especially back there where the stakes are literally nothing. Like you are doing it to prove something to yourself, to get a time. Um, it just doesn't like to me that's just the what is the thing where if you're using poison you're just poisoning yourself or what the the little saying to the effect of, if you just kind of have all this like bitterness and like poison in you about someone else, it's actually just in you.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
you're letting an outside circumstance ruin your race. Like the
Yeah.
same way if it, thunderstormed, would that have ruined your race?
Right.
Like it just seems so sad to me that someone would let that ruin their day when we're all out here because we love running. Like, why
And
are
that
we
should
gonna
be
do
the
that?
point.
Yeah.
Well, and it's okay. So you bring up a really good point, which is not on our list of topics, but this idea of like keeping track of place. So, okay, park run. I think this is where it all stems from, right? Park run, apparently I can't say that. Park run was all about showing up and competing to your best of your ability that day. It was never about what's your fastest time. That might be what it was, but it was showing up with community. And I think when park run started to keep track of like records at places and overall park run time, I'm like, aren't you getting away from the very ethos of what park run is? Which then gets like, as I think about like age groups and being out on the course and like seeing your time, like, isn't that then getting away from the ethos of what it is to go out and compete? Because like as an elite, and you're an elite too, when I go out there, if I'm competing with somebody else, I promise you that it's not going to be my best day ever. But if I go out and compete with myself and like work with other people, I am going to be the best version of my house. Do self, not house, self. But listen, like when we come to the like towards the finish line, and like if we're in a sprint, like I absolutely want to win, but not at the expense of like you, like I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but you know what I'm trying to say. You're much more eloquent than I am.
Not in this case. This one is just a lot of stammering on my part as well. So I'm right. I understand the sentiment. I'm right there with you. I think it's too bad that like this debate has really allowed sport, especially women's sport, to get so divided when really right now I would say women's sport more than ever really needs to be
Yeah.
actually like working together to, rise all boats. And I think that like this is sort of one of those like false like it really is just like this kind of like big scary like straw man argument over here when there's all of these other issues over here and people can't see me but I'm pointing in two very different directions. So
Molly's dancing, just so
yeah.
you all know. Molly's
doing,
dancing
doing a
back
little
and forth.
dance doing a little dance.
Mm.
So yes, I just feel like there's a lot more stuff we could be worrying about
Yeah.
and protesting about right now that yeah is not about that. There we go.
There we go. There we got it. Okay. Cycling. I also, along with watching a long running race, I watched a long cycling race on Sunday. Sunday was the Amstel Gold Race. There was also a bike race on Friday, and because Friday was Good Friday, I also watched the Friday bike race because, can't tell you the name of that one. So we're moving into a different series of spring classics. It kicks off with the Amstel Gold Race. It's called the Amstel Gold Ladies Race. Even um someone said on the commentary, like, really, we're calling it the ladies race? Okay, before we get to the winners, hey, Flow Bikes, I absolutely don't need a new job. I don't need to take on anything else. I totally want to take this on. Why are there no women commentating on the women's bike races? And in the men's race, there is a woman who commentates alongside the men. She's great. I get why you can't do both because they start to happen simultaneously and like your brain can only do so many things. But why aren't women commentating on the women's race when they are happen simultaneously? And we could talk. Anyways, yeah, I would really like to do that. So that's what I was thinking about while watching Flow Bikes both Friday and Sunday this week.
So flow bikes, call us.
Yeah.
Available at reasonable prices. Although, you know what? I will actually counter that slightly and say I'm almost happier with that state of affairs than I would be if they had a woman commentating on the women's race, but not the men's race. I can't really
Fair.
explain why, but I kind of love that they have a woman doing the men's commentary.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm all about that. I think we need to, yes, I agree. We need to add more women to the commentary. I really don't know why we don't have more. I know at like I can name right off the top of my head like 5 to 10 women who are very competent, very good at this that could definitely do it and would be willing to do
You're
it.
taking my job away. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. Yeah, there are a lot of women who are great at this.
So, yes, would love to see it. And as someone who has commentated for flow bikes before, like, yeah, it's call us. Bring
Yeah.
more women on.
I promise you I'll be really good at the research part.
Oh, dear Lord. Yeah. You'd be fantastic. I'd hire you in a heartbeat. But the Amstel Gold Race itself, Team SD Works Pro Time, Misha Brenewald took the win. Ellen Van Dyke was second place, and cyclocross and mountain bike superstar Puck Peters in third. Yay!
Yeah.
Did you see the
Oh,
video that I posted of the finish where at the on the podium where they're
yeah.
drinking the beers versus the men? The men all kind of like politely like cheers each other, like take a tiny sip. The women are just like chugging and just like
Well, they had a
so
race.
happy. Yeah.
They had a boat race on the podium, and Puck smashed the other two women. Like she put that beer back so fast, I was like, "Oh, I need to take lessons from you again on how to do that."
Yeah, yeah. I think she might be able to like world record beer mile at some point in her career. Just putting it out there.
Is there an equivalent in biking? Like, is there a
I
bike
don't think
mile?
so.
Okay. I mean, pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
I have done the beer mile in a tutu before. Mhm, mhm. I'm not very good at it. I was good at the mile part. I never practiced my chugging enough, and my stomach is my stomach. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Sloshy.
I would not even attempt strictly due to yeah, the slosh you got.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, I did actually, so I was kind of scrolling around and Cassia Nui Adoma posted on Instagram that she had mixed feelings after Amstel, and I'm going to quote here, it felt like we had another quite passive race once the breakaway established. Maybe these days it's more about creating different early scenarios instead of anticipating finals. Shrug. It's like, whoa, that's a little spicy.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm curious to see, what kind of happens after that. Like if there is going to be some more interesting stuff. But I mean, that's the way, back when I was racing on the road, that did tend to be how women's racing shook out. So I would
Don't
not like
let
a
them
return to
go.
that. Or like once there is a breakaway, they're just gone and like the peloton just kind of like chills out and he just kind of lives to fight another day.
Okay, so the racing was actually exciting, and you could see. I'm like, okay, she was never in the like chasing pack trying to bridge the gap, right? Allison Jackson, oh my gosh, did she put it out there to try to close the gap? So I would say, I don't think it's a return to racing before where the pack just sat in. I think the girls up the road knew what was going on, and I think the girls in the peloton fought. And I think, you do those loops at the end, and the Coburg, or it's not the Coburg because that's a city in Ontario, but that hill looked just gross. And I think they have to do it three times. And it just that kept it separated. And to be fair, before it would be like, it broke and we just kind of settle in. They was just attacking and fighting the whole time. So I'm like, okay, I wasn't in the race, but I definitely watched the whole thing.
So it feels a little maybe revisionist history-ish here.
Yeah. That's where I'm going with this. Yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. And I shout out to Allison Jackson. I think she finished up seventh in a sprint. So
Yeah.
yay for her. Team E, like, I mean, EF is just like killing it this season. I think they're gonna have some real, like, they just have such a like high power squad right now, but in kind of like a sort of stealthy way almost. Like it's not quite the like SD Works or Canyon Surround. Like it's a little under the radar, but I think it's going to be the team this year.
Yeah, so think about how fun the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift might be this year with like because then you have Lidl Trek, right? And then you've got Puck Petersay's team. Like I think like we're really seeing this like change and rise in women's cycling. So again, revisionist history, like I don't see it as like divide me. I see it as like divide, attack.
Okay, I might need to pull that video clip right there.
Math is the same way, right? Divide and then do the parts, attack.
You would bring it back to math, Sasha. You
Of
would.
course I would. I love math. I love cycling. I love math. I love running.
You know what I don't love?
Hockey.
The US winning the hockey.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, hang on. Hot take. I watched the Canada-Finland game, and in both semifinal games, there were two game misconducts. So one Someone tried to harm the US goalie in the semifinal game. I don't know who they were playing, but a Team Canada player took a 5-minute penalty and a game misconduct. So they, I believe, went in a little shorthanded, in terms of like maximum star power. Um, what I've always loved about women's sport is we don't skatey punchy the way the NHL skatey punchies. And I thought the games were getting a little skatey punchy. It's also nice to see that like it was close, right? Like it was won in overtime,
For
which
sure.
we haven't had in a while. Um, I think Canada puts itself on a pedestal when it comes to hockey. I think it's been some of the challenges that we faced with safe sport and some of the other challenges with hockey. So maybe this is a call up for Canada, unlike my friends who work there who work tirelessly to do all this work, of like maybe we need to reevaluate how we're approaching and playing the game so that we can come out on top next time.
Love it. Love it.
Mhm.
Okay. And speaking of love, I'm just like bringing up the
Oh,
next
yeah.
ones, just one after the other here.
Okay.
League
Did
One
you like
volleyball.
when you right, so when you see LOVB, like do you also see love or is it just me?
100%. Yeah, I read it
Okay.
as love, and then I had to like go. I was like, wait, why is there an E? And then I was like, oh, nope, that's a B. But also, volleyball is not two words, so it's also kind of silly anyway. But
The B might stand for something else. I was doing this sort of quickly, but volleyball is one of the fastest growing sports. And from, some of the work that I did with what was then Fast and Female and Girls Forward on the, in the urban centers, like girls want to play volleyball. And this league has like really just elevated the experience for everybody. Actually, I'm gonna give Raw a shout out. So Raw, one of their events is that you can play in Grand Rapids where their high performance team from the LOVB plays.
love,
Anyways.
love,
But whoever, so when you win that tournament, just before the game, they present you your trophy before the game goes on. And so the stadium's filled, like it's a cool place to play. And I think that's a really cool way to like grassroots recreation all the way to professional. And so like are there recreational players then bringing their kids to then come see this high performance game? So I love what this league is doing. I love what it represents. And I'm really excited to see it grow in its second season next year.
love it, love it. And NSL, and I'm forgetting it.
National
NSL,
Super League.
National
National Super
Super. I
League.
was like National Soccer League. That doesn't sound right. Super League,
No.
Super League.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, how was the first match?
Okay, 10 p.m. Vancouver. Sorry, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. for Vancouver. Given that like
Ouch.
most of the country lives on the East Coast, I think that game needed to start earlier. Stands were pretty empty, which kind of like turned me off at the start. I was like, well, this is not fun. I did stay up and watch. I did fall asleep in the second half, like just not. I built myself this like big fire up at the cottage and like had all the things. The dog got into bed, left me on the couch. It was, listen, I don't know enough about soccer football to actually like know enough about the game. I'd love to like watch with someone who could explain the rules to me other than like ball in net equals goal. Yeah, it was pretty good. Saturday there was a sold out game at BMO, and I say sold out in air quotes. They didn't sell the upper deck. So like the game sold out, I think a month ago. So knowing that it had sold out, like why wouldn't you open the upper deck to like maximize seat sales? And like if it's a long-term play of like, oh, we broke the world record for like number of people in the stands, I think it's doing a disservice as it goes to a smaller field with like or smaller stands, not a smaller field, same size field. Up at York, like, wouldn't you want to continue to like drive eyeballs? Anyways, I don't know enough about PR. I do math, right? Toronto let a goal in the first 90 seconds, and I was like, "Ugh, really? Man.
All right, all right. And you had an AI
Oh
post, and we do
yeah.
have an AI episode coming. So I don't want to like go too in depth on this, but I mean, when you feed NSL and like you fed like a variety of
Oh yeah.
prompts into the generator and the number of white men that it produced.
No, black men. So what's interesting is the bias for athletes is generally black men. So mostly men. And then when you are like, hey, just and I'd say as a reminder, is like, I think I said, remember that NSL, the Northern Super League, is Canada Women's Soccer League. It would then generate images of women, which were typically white and typically posing. And it was just this reminder of like, okay. And that came from, and I'm, calling people up and in, I went to the NSL site and there was images of the players and then images of those commentating on it. And they were all white women. And given the diversity of the league, and okay, I do have like I'm a Toronto fan, so I definitely looked at the Toronto team more, and I loved how much diversity there was on the team, and that wasn't reflected on the website. And I texted Kathy, who I work with, work for, however you want to say it, and I was like, I know I'm supposed to be doing certain work this morning, but I know you're gonna love what I'm working on. And so I just spent an hour, feeding generative AI some prompts, and that's sort of what came out. There's more of it up on the Yellow Running Shoes Substack, including the images, and then my Instagram's got a pretty good set of the images too.
Perfect. And we'll include links to those in the show notes. Definitely everyone should be subscribed to that Substack and be following Yellow Running Shoes because you are doing so many posts that have so much information in them. I love it.
Thank
Don't know
you.
how you have time. I'm
Mm.
dying trying to keep up here.
It's not a contest. It's not a
It's
contest.
not a contest. No, we're in this together.
We
Um,
are.
okay. Any other sports before we get into today's guest?
No, I mean, there's always more sports. I'd love to know from other people like what other sports we could follow. So like send us a note.
Definitely, definitely. All right, and today's guest, it's Earth Month. It's April. We're nearing the end of April here, which I don't know how that happened. But I am so excited to talk sustainability and running with today's guest.
Yeah, Tina Muir. So I actually don't remember when I met Tina. Tina and I raced together at the Indianapolis half marathon, which was like we raced in non-super shoes. So this is pre-super shoes. We raced at the Indianapolis half marathon together. Um, but I got to when Tina's book came out, I actually got to fly down to New York on behalf of World Athletics and talk, like be on a panel with her about her book.
Oh,
And
fun.
yeah, it was so much fun. And I read her book. I mean, I devoured it. Tina's someone I've always admired, right? Like she's got a great podcast, Running for Real. I think that she approaches sustainability like not just as an athlete, but in your life in a way that's that's meaningful for you. It's not about being perfect. It's about like doing the things that are important to you.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And I actually really I admit I had had her book on my reading list for a long time, and this episode prompted me to actually get around to reading it. And I loved that the book actually was broken into three sections that I didn't realize. And I think this is maybe like a problem that the book's PR had, I'll say, where I thought it was just entirely about sustainability and the environment and climate change and that was going to be it. But she actually ties so much more than that into it. Like, yes, it's about that, but it's also about you as a sustainable runner, like just as you, the person, and being able to do this sport for the long run, if you will. And then about community and like finding the right people and volunteering and all of that kind of stuff. And also, the very important topic of actual sustainability, climate, all that kind of stuff. But I loved the blend of them together. I find it so great when someone can really kind of bring all of those things together. So you kind of feel like this call to action that feels more holistic rather than I need to drop all of my running goals in order to, save the whales. I don't know. Are we still saving whales? We should be.
I think whales, tree frogs, all the different things. But and I think, Molly and you read it more recently than I have. It was this sustainability in a way that it's like it's not just about like being a sustainable runner or athlete now. It's this idea of being a sustainable athlete for your whole life. And so how do you redefine certain things and can you smile more? Can you connect with more people? Um, I don't know. I mean, everyone will hear Tina's a really special person.
Yes, I am so excited to get to talk to her. So let's dive in. Enjoy this conversation with Tina Muir. Make sure you are subscribed. If you enjoy the podcast, rate, review, get in touch, all of the things. All right, let's get into it. Tina, welcome to Strong Girl Talk. Sasha and I are beyond excited to have you here, especially, during the very end here of Earth Month. It's, Earth Day was just this week. This is just like the most exciting interview that I have had a chance to do. Um,
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful to hear, and I'm excited to be here to talk about it. So yeah, let's have like two women who are what I consider strong girls in the same right? So I'm excited to see where we go with this conversation.
I love it. And the fun part about this is you are also a podcast host. So I feel
Mm.
like I don't
Mhm.
know about you. I find whenever I'm on someone else's podcast, my urge is always to then accidentally start like interviewing
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. Yeah, sometimes actually when people do that though, I kind of enjoy it because when you ask someone a question that you find interesting, the listener actually would want to know what your answer to that is. And so when they say, "What do you think about that?" I like actually quite enjoy when it goes off that way, as long as it's not they do it with every question. But yeah, it's fun.
Absolutely, yeah. So, podcast host of Running for Real, you're a runner yourself, and
Mhm.
the main thing we want to chat about today, you're the author of Becoming a Sustainable Runner with one of my favorite humans, Zoe Rome.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things is during the Leadville Trail 100 this year, in the morning, in like the wee hours of the morning, I was running and I had several different people, I think, glance at me, see bangs, see kind of where I was in the race relatively, and be like, "Are you Zoe?" And I was like, in in cycling, people know who I am, but in running, people know who she is. So it's a great mistake, great person to be mistaken for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's funny though, because yeah, you're right. Actually, there aren't too many people in the running space with kind of dark brown hair with bangs. That's not a look you see too often. So
It's I think it's yeah, me, Corinne Malcolm, and Zoe Rome. Like
yeah,
we the three of
you
us
hold
really do need our own podcast that's just like
it.
runners with bangs or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I wish I could have bangs, but it doesn't work for me.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole
Mm.
thing. Okay, so let's kind of dive right into, this is Earth Month, but talk to us about how you got into the environmental side of things in the first place, because being a pro
Mm.
runner doesn't necessarily like people tend to think of like running as being this environmentally friendly activity. We know that's not exactly entirely
Mm.
true.
Hmm.
Um, but you don't really see that many like activists slash runners. So how did this come about for you?
Yeah, no, I would. My reaction to tell people when they think that running is an environmentally conscious sport, I will say I'll give trail an asterisk, but in the road running world, just walk around an expo and then tell me what you think. Um, because yeah, there's a lot of work we have to do. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I'd always been environmentally tilted, but not from a kind of activist, like change the world kind of sense, but more of a common sense. My dad is a very common sense person. He very much took the framework when I was a child of like, well, why would you waste food? And why would you? I actually don't know in Canada if you're the same as we are in the UK or more in the US, but in the US, people don't really shut their doors between rooms. Like my office that I'm in right now, my door is wide open. In England, the doors kind of like close themselves. You tend to keep them closed to keep the heat in various rooms. So my dad would always be like, well, why would you waste heat by leaving the door open? Why would you waste food? Why would you waste things? So it was always there, but not from a quote unquote environmental standpoint. It was just kind of like an economical efficiency side of things. So it was always in there. I was deeply impacted by the movies Fern Gully and The Lion King, I've realized recently. I actually didn't put that together until recently, but very much was drawn to the environmental, naturey movies. And then it was really in the back of my mind my whole life of thinking about these things. But it was a close friend challenging me, saying, "You have this public platform. You're always talking about it to us, but you never say it publicly." She challenged me to do so. I did. And then it turned out very quickly that there were people craving that kind of information. But again, as you said, not from a kind of activist viewpoint, but more of like, I'm not getting this quite right, but I thought I could share some ideas of what I am doing with you. Not like here's me, a vegan who never flies, who never does anything wrong, but like, I'm messing this up. But I thought I could share what I've learned along the way. So turned out there's an appetite for that.
I love that. Sasha, I know you have follow-ups. I have to just like asterisk the Fern Gully thing. Can you imagine a movie being made in 2025 where the bad guy is just big oil and like an evil oil monster? Like that movie was so ahead of its time.
I
Also
know.
terrifying. Side note, like it still gives me nightmares if I
Yeah, it
think about
is.
it too much.
It really is. Yeah. What's interesting though is I said about my dad, my mum is actually not really environmentally conscious. And so I actually had my family, my parents, my kids watch it with me recently. And my mum still didn't put it together that that was big oil. She just was like, "Oh, that's a nice movie." And I was like, she like it. So it is hidden, but yeah, once you see it and you kind of afterwards, I explained it. I was like, "But that is pollution." Like, and so yeah, you have to kind of. So I think you have to be in the right frame of mind to even accept that movie. But for me, that was deeply impactful as a child of like more so the trees. Like the bit that sticks out to me is the tree feels pain. That was the part more than anything that's I like. I don't know if I was a tree in a former life or something, but like the tree feeling pain was the bit that stuck to me.
Now I'm just thinking about
Okay.
watching Bambi and my dad talking about like deer being an overpopulated species in New Jersey and it being like a problem.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna watch Fern Gully tonight, just so that
Have you
I've
not
been
seen
like,
it?
I have, but not for a while. But because I'm not
Yeah.
working out, Tina, I
Mm.
basically like sit on my couch every night and like do data deep dives on certain things. And I'm gonna watch Fern Gully tonight while I'm
Okay.
doing that. So,
Yeah, you should. You should.
um, I was laughing when you said closing the doors. My best friend growing up lived on a farm. And I think as you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe that was my first exposure. Like her dad could like from 400 acres across the farm be like, the door's open, close the door. Right. And so like, and it was super cool to like have this like contrast between like city life and rural life on this farm. And so, it is Earth Month. And, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, why is it only Earth Day, Earth Month? Like, this like stewardship of care as we sort of talk about it with, through an indigenous lens here. And so,
Mhm.
one of my favorite things to do, which I've told you about, is like pick up trash on my dog walks, which I can't do right now because I'm still not allowed to walk. But like,
Mhm.
what are some of your favorite things to do during Earth Month, but like generally that like, yes, sort of selfishly satisfy you, but like also are really good for the planet?
Yeah, no, I do think about that often. And actually my daughter yesterday going to school for Earth Day, she told me that they had to write down three things that they were going to promise to do as children. And sorry, I'm going to go off in a bit of a side note for a minute here.
Go for it.
Um, and so she told me that she wrote down never cut down a tree. Um, what the other two she did? I can't remember the second one, but it was an impactful one, and the third one was just the cop out of recycle. But then last night we actually had to go into the school, my husband and I noticed that like 15 of the 20 kids wrote "Don't cut down a tree." And I found that so interesting because I was like, well, some of you are going to break that. Um, because like, not that like, of course I understand that like if a tree should be cut down, if it's going to fall on someone's house, absolutely cut it down. But anyway, so that was just like an interesting thing. And so I do talk to my kids often about little things that we can be doing and little things that they can kind of do in school that teach their friends ways of doing things. And I've had instances where I've given my daughter only takes reusable items in terms of like her sandwiches in a reusable silicone bag and her snacks are in bees wrap and things like that. And she's told me how some other kids have now got those. And that's such a beautiful example to me of she didn't say, why are you using a Ziploc bag? That's gross. But she literally had it. And then her friends must have gone home and said, hey, mummy, why don't I have a reusable bag? So I think there's lots of like subliminal things that we can think about. Yes, picking up trash is a good one. And I do that too on my way to pick my daughter up and drop her off. I do pick up trash on the way, and I like to hope that some of the other parents see me do that and they're inclined to kind of pick up something themselves. Another easy one is, simply especially here in the US, but from what I've got from our conversation, Sasha, um, cycling places. Like it's so easy to jump in the car. But going, a mile or two on the bike, especially in the summer, is actually really enjoyable. Especially if you are like an athlete who has this quote unquote training and you can have this leisurely ride where you can kind of open your eyes. You can't and please don't hold your phone, use your phone while you're riding a bike, so it gives you that time to really be present in nature in an intentional way rather than a training way. So that's another way I really love to, particularly in the summer, is just kind of getting out on my bike for small simple things. And then another easy one I would just say is like the community piece. The more we do within our local communities, the better. So rather than jumping to a Tim Hortons or a Starbucks, where's a local roastery near you? Where's a family-run business whose dream it is to open a coffee shop, or a restaurant that is run by a local chef who gets their eggs from a local farm? Like, that is a really simple one that, yeah, maybe technically isn't sustainability, but the more we support and build on our local communities and go to our local bookstores instead of buying books on Amazon, the better off, you're keeping things in the area. That is going to lead to sustainability naturally, and also kind of keep these big corporations out of our communities as much as we can.
I
I
love
love
that.
that you had the Tim Hortons like right at the, you're
I
like,
know.
okay,
I
Canadians
do
are
know the
listening to
Canadian, yeah,
this.
coffee. Yep. I didn't have the example of the doors, but I do know you love your Tim Hortons.
We do. I'm laughing about the wrappers a little bit. So Tina, like I talk about picking up trash. So as a child, and I guess like my mother instilled this in me, like we were not allowed to litter. Like littering was like the number one crime in our house. And my backpacks would be filled with wrappers because I was like, my mother is somehow watching. And if I drop a wrapper, and so like this idea of like, instilling, and I'm sure you do this with your kids, like one of the things I've super noticed in my neighborhood lately is like I watch kids walk to school. My window, like my office window, like is on the sidewalk, and they like finish something and they drop it on the ground. And I can't help but wonder, like, when did that messaging get lost? Like, part of the reason I have to pick up trash is because we haven't talked about like litterless lunches, which your kids do. And then if you have a package, like, how do you put it in the right receptacle? And so, I think it's almost like going a little bit back, but I still actually laugh because like if I'm out and I'm like, oh, there's no garbage, I just like hoard my wrappers and then at some point have to empty them all in the garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I feel to me that's like a normal thing to do, isn't it? To stuff your backpack with wrappers. I definitely do that. But the one that gets me is the cigarettes. Like
Oh,
the instinct, you don't, I mean, rarely do you see like maybe outside a building where they have like an ashtray thing that they put them in. But the rest of the time, if you see someone smoking a cigarette, that cigarette butt is going on the floor. And when we do these plugging events for trash pickup, the number one thing we pick up is cigarette butts. And those don't, I can't remember exactly how many years they take to break down, but I want to say it's around 50 or something like that. Like it is not, people in their head, they think, oh, this is made of paper. It's going to break down in like 6 months, but it doesn't. I mean, when we pick up trash, we see, but they're clearly like years old. So yeah.
I had many of those when we went plogging in
Mm.
Toronto together. I would love if you could share. Not everyone's going to know on this podcast what plogging is. So
Sure.
can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I often do these trash pickup runs, essentially. Plogging is combining the Swedish phrase plocka up, which means to pick up, and the English word of jogging to make plogging. And I like to do this, at race events in various cities and just encouraging people. More than that, I actually think it's better to, as you do, Sasha, just in your day-to-day life, pick up things. You don't necessarily have to go about taking a trash bag and really spending time doing it. However, that people seeing someone going through their streets, picking up waste, putting it in a bag, that subconsciously or consciously will inspire that person to take an action, a positive action of some kind. So there is something to this act of plogging where you're out there for maybe 20 to 40 minutes or an hour doing this because all those people driving by will see that conscious action, whereas you bending down to pick up one piece isn't necessarily going to grab their attention. And so I do like to do this in cities, but I also remind people, like, imagine if we all just picked up one to two things every day, like every runner, every person who was outside walking, that could have a huge impact. And again, to your point, Sasha, of I think a lot of the time that people throw things down when they already see things down, or when they see that there is things on the floor, they're like, well, someone else is doing it. Whereas if it's a pristine, like if you think of a trail, you rarely see things on the trail because it's so jarring to see it that people kind of put that piece together of I shouldn't do this, or if they do, it's by accident. And so yeah, the trail is a good example of where you don't see it much. So when you do see it, it really sticks out. Um, Although on that note, I do want to, one thing I like to tell my kids is when they're like, but why would someone litter? And I'm like, well, you actually don't know that they did it on purpose. I am sure all three of us have had some kind of wrapper blow out of our pocket or our bag or something to where we have done that. So I try to also give people an act of compassion. Like if you find later in the day you go to empty your pocket of your wrapper and it's not there, like forgive yourself. So
I like that because I think that also just kind of like sets this precedent that, we don't have to approach all of this with like this lens of anger and like, yeah, just being like really frustrated with everyone else. It's like, okay, we can look at this in like a slightly gentler way.
yes.
Yeah.
I was one of the things Maddie Orr, so Maddie, Dr. Madeline Orr, right? Her book Warming Up. And I couldn't find the country and I'm like running out of time. But there's this, I think it's a rugby federation, and I actually think it's Fiji now that I say it out loud, where after the game, the two teams shake hands, the game is over, and they clean the field. And if the field's been cleaned for 15 minutes, then they clean the community. And I think about, I said to both of you before we started, like I was at a kids' sports event here in Toronto. And I would, this idea of like stewardship of the land, but more than anything, for me, what I think about is like in a coaching lens is those conversations that kids would have about their sporting experience in those moments of like picking up trash and how garbage. We're also here in Canada. I have to say garbage, trash, garbage, trash, garbage. How that could bring together. I mean, have you seen instances of that with your kids' sport?
Well, my kids are a little bit different in that mine are 4 and 7, and they both do swimming, and so that's just a like literal life-saving thing. My oldest does rock climbing, which is a bit of a different sport. I love that she does rock climbing, but we actually don't do any like soccer or basketball or anything like that at this point. So I don't actually know. I don't know if I can answer your question because I haven't seen it. I'm trying to think of any, I will say because of them seeing me picking up things when we are at the park or walking along, they often do pick things up and hand them to me, which has its downsides and that sometimes I'm like, don't pick that up. Um, but yes, to them, that's a very normal thing to do.
Right. And I think about it in the project that I did working on at the University of Toronto, and I'm like, what an awesome toolkit, right? Like if your kid is participating in organized sport, here's a way for the team to come together either before or after as like warm up or cool. Yeah. So also everybody connect with Tina because she also has awesome ideas of like how to create, sustainability. So, which is a good shift. Like I'd love to know, I've got like a whole series of questions about this, but like, what does it mean to be, both? I mean, the book was like a sustainable runner, but you and I are both going through an injury journey. I'd say, what does it mean to be a sustainable athlete?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the interesting thing is that sustainability people often think of as the environmental side of things, but sustainability can mean so many things. And I mentioned community earlier that, backing, getting a bit narrower, community piece, sustainability of a community is that local connection. A sustainable community, a sustainable city is not going to be a city where everything is being outsourced to corporations. That is not a long-term strategy. What is building this network that ties in naturally to allow humans to do the things that we are kind of inclined to do. Like, for example, if we do have a natural weather disaster, we want to support other people within our community because we've built this network to care about them. This is my people in my area. And then, yeah, within as individuals, we also have to think there's so much, particularly within the sporting world, where it's kind of like, oh, I'm 30 years old. I don't care what happens to my body when I'm 60. I'll deal with it when it comes. But I'm going to run through this pain and get this cortisone shot and get this thing and that thing, because I want to get the most out of myself. And I did that for many years. Sasha, I know you did too. And now you're shaking your head like you would never do that.
No, never took a cortisone shot.
Oh,
Never
no,
did
no, no.
any
I
of
just
those.
mean like pushing your
Oh,
your body like
oh yeah, absolutely
no,
pushing
no,
to
I
the
never
limit. No
did that
question.
either. But I'm just
Okay.
saying like, pushing your body is the ultimate like, way of committing to your sport. But actually, I think there's something beautiful about, having a lifelong relationship to a sport, having this approach of I want to enjoy my life all the way through, even if that means taking a step back, and maybe getting a slightly, you know, less of a performance. Even, I can see there's some examples like if you are truly at the top of your game and you kind of decide, you know what, I think I'm going to take to run to medal at the Olympics. I'm going to take the hit of me limping when I'm 70 years old. But I think for most of us, we just don't need to get to that extreme. And now, as a 36-year-old, just having a year ago had surgery, and Sasha, I know you are particularly in, the early stages. Molly, I'm not sure if you've ever had a surgery or anything that you've gone through, but I did this because I wanted to have a healthy body and not just ignore something until I literally couldn't take it anymore and I couldn't walk. So I did that proactively in some ways so that I could have a future of enjoying my life and moving freely, hopefully for the rest of my life.
I love that. It's luckily I have, knock on wood, not yet had to have any of them make that decision.
Mm.
It is funny though. I was just interviewing a guy a couple days ago, and he's an older rider, and he was saying cyclist, and he was just kind of like he was telling me about joking with a friend, and he's like, "Oh yeah, cycling is great because like when your knees wear out, you just go into the doctor and you get a new set of them." And he said it so cavalierly, and I was just like, "Oh."
There's a little more to it than that.
Maybe we could take a step back here and like think about how we can do this without destroying our knees. Not where like knee replacement is the automatic solution here, but okay, okay. It's a great quote, but
Yeah.
maybe not the best like lifestyle choice.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, so on that, so I mean, I'm when this comes out almost 6 weeks post-op, you're about a year post-op. You know, I've mentioned some of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of like being sustainable, right? Like in
Mhm.
terms of like how I'm eating food so that for recovery, like the amount of sleep, like what were some of, the sustainability things that you're doing, have done to, I guess, to privilege that injury so that you can have this future with sport?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was interesting, and I'm not sure if you were the same, but for me, in the first, like, yeah, about 6 weeks post-surgery, I don't think I've ever taken as good care of my body because I finally had this ultimate respect for it that I did not have when it was kind of working for me the way I wanted it to. Um, and I just wanted to take care of it. So I slept more than I ever had. I was sleeping 9 to 10 hours a night. I was eating not in a restricted, like for me there's a difference between eating healthy that is like I got to eat healthy because I got to run my best and I got to like cut out the sugar because it's evil and blah blah blah, versus what this was, that was like I want to give my body sweet potatoes and beets because I want to love it and take care of it and respect it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to have, a bowl of ice cream, but I want to prioritize those things, and if the ice cream goes on top, then great. And so I really took care of myself, prioritized that. Um, and so that was the early stages. And then now is interesting because I have never been good at the supplemental stuff with my sport of like doing the drills and the rolling and the PT stuff. I have always just been so lazy with that. And I feel very proud of myself that I did the stuff, especially the things at home, because as most people listening would imagine, or would probably know themselves, when you are at physical therapy or at a physio, or I'm not sure what the Canadian word for that is. See, I'm translating, by the way, from English to American and then to Canadian. So uh, yeah. Anyway, so when I would go to that, I would do it when they were watching me. But as soon as I went home, it'd be like, well, I'm not, I'll do it later, was kind of the remark. Whereas this time I did it. So sustainability for me now is kind of recognizing my body is not 20 anymore, and I have to do these other things if I want to continue going, if I want to pay that respect to my body. And so that's the way I've seen it, is like a love for the future, yes, but also a love and understanding and respect for all that my body has done, especially as a mother having grown two children inside of it. That I just have the utmost respect for my body and want to be kind to it rather than punishing it for not running 3 seconds faster than I wanted it to, as I did in the past.
Okay, hot question. What is your least favorite rehabilitation exercise to do?
I mean, I have done about 25,000 calf raises, not really, but
Maybe.
my inclination is to say calf raises. No, I think it is the hip extension stuff, where you like put your arms on a bench and have to bend down. But when you've got like a heavy weight on there, um, I think that's one of my least favorites. Yeah. There's probably some arm ones as well, but nothing's coming to mind. Oh no, you know what it is? It's a push up slash press up slash, I don't know what the Canadian version is. That is my least favorite exercise.
That is definitive. You really do not
I
like
really
that.
do not. In fact, a few weeks ago I snapped one of the bands at my strength training and I said, "Well, now I've snapped a band, I don't ever have to do a push up again." And he was like, "Ha, yeah, right." And I was like, thought that might like get me out of those forever.
So you're talking about using, a rubber band that snaps that has to go in the trash. And so I think a lot of people would look at us and be like, "Hey, that's not sustainable." But in the context of us being sustainable, I mean, it's part of it. And I think to
Yeah.
your point about this imperfect part, like I think that's such a good point, Tina.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, well, and there's so many things. I mean, I mean, actually, I've been finding that even more than the like sustainability conversation environmentally, the like microplastics conversation, of, the amount of microplastics we're consuming is a tie-in to sustainability. But interestingly, once you start going down that I want to remove microplastics from my life, you find there is endless rabbit holes. For example, last night I was washing up and I had a cloth that I wash up with. And it suddenly occurred to me, I was like, I wonder if there's plastic in this. Looked it up. Sure enough, there's polyester in it. And I was like, ah, like I've been washing up with this for years. Like not that same one, but that variation of. So yeah, like, and it's the same with sustainability. Like you would drive yourself crazy it is absolutely impossible to live a sustainable, 100% sustainable life, which is why there's zero waste accounts on social media really frustrate me because that it's just not realistic. And if it is, it's because you live in, I don't know what the Canadian equivalent is, but like Malibu, California, where maybe you could do it, but the rest of the country, that's just not possible no matter how much you try. So yes, imperfection is kind of, if we all did it imperfectly, we would have so much of a better world than 10% of us doing it, trying and failing to do it perfectly.
I love that. And I'm wondering, you have this whole, back third of the book is really about kind of how to do this in a way that like makes sense within the context of still wanting to be a runner, still wanting to perform at your best. So I'm wondering, could you maybe run us through maybe just like a few of the things? I'm, kind of looking at I have the table of contents pulled up here. So I'm wondering, even maybe speaking towards like traveling, right? Like a lot of people have like the bucket list race destinations or just automatically assume that every season they're going to fly or travel to races. So maybe even just kind of talk us through how to look at, yeah, racing specifically through the lens of like being a more sustainable athlete, just to kind of give people an example of how to think about this in a perfectly imperfect way.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good example in that, like, a good example for me is I live 5 hours. Okay, I could take a 40 minute flight up to Chicago, but I choose to take the train, which takes 5 hours if it's on time. And that is a choice that I make to say, I need to get to this place. I work with this place. I could take the easy option, but I'm going to choose to take the long option, because that's an opportunity I can take. There might be some races, or for example, when I go to New York, there is no train, or if there is, it's going to take me 3 days to get to New York from here in St. Louis. And so it's kind of making the right choice when you can. Um, and I'm not someone who tells people not to go to a goal race. So if your goal race is in Vancouver, and you have to take a flight there, what can you do once you get there? Can you take the public transport to get down to the city? Can you consider what you're eating and eat plant-based options as much as you can while you're there? But maybe the meal before the race, you want some kind of, meat in there, or some kind of dairy product that is not vegan or even vegetarian, but you want to have it. So okay, there's a break. This is important to me. And then it's, if that goal race is there, go to that goal race, but could you do some kind of tune-up event or some kind of prep race or simulation where you live? For example, actually, I'm looking right now at my first quote unquote race back. I've done races, I will be doing races, but I'm talking about the one that I'm really going to go for. That is going to be a flight away from me, but I'm going to do my race along the way locally here in St. Louis. So how can you make the right choice when you can to be local, to support your community, to, make choices once you get there, but also forgive yourself for having something. You are going to be a more sustainable human and be able to take care of the planet more if you are also nourishing yourself with something that is important to you. And if it is somewhere else, then, that's something that's going to help you be a better human that can help the planet as well.
I love it. I love it. And because we are talking about, running, but also all of these other sports, running, I'm gonna say, I know cycling too. Cycling and running are kind of the two biggest proponents of this. Let's talk about greenwashing. What is it? How can we look out for it? Because especially this month, when everyone's kind of in the Earth Month mode, I would say that's when greenwashing is sort of at its finest, we'll say.
Yeah, I want to address Earth Month, Earth Day first, which when you step back, and I don't know about you both, but I saw a lot of it yesterday on Earth Day. A lot of the accounts I follow said, and I said it too, like every day is Earth Day, every month is Earth Month. Because if you step back and think about that, like we live in a world of nature. So don't we want to be out in nature every day? Like, so it is kind of crazy when you think about that we take this 1 month, 1 day to kind of be like, yay, Earth Day. But then it's like, okay, the other days of the year, it's something else. So I don't see Earth Day, Earth Month as something where we should be going rah rah for it this month and then stay inside the rest of the year. So I don't feel like it has to be a big day, but can we all go outside for at least 5 minutes a day? Like that shouldn't be too much to ask. And then, so yeah, with this month, brands do tend to come in and say, we really care about this. They know it's a like thing to talk about. And there are ads everywhere saying about Earth Month. And so greenwashing is kind of basically that, where a brand, an organization, a person talks about, something that makes it seem like they care, but they aren't doing anything on the back end. A good example of this is, carbon offset should be one piece of a strategy of what a brand or a corporation or a race or whatever uses. That's one piece that they use. But if they are just saying, we're going to carry on operations as usual, we're going to keep cutting down trees, we're going to deforestation, we're going to keep pulling fossil fuels out of the ground, we're going to keep harming the earth, but we're then going to give some money to a charity, like that doesn't out right away, doesn't right all the kind of wrongs you're choosing to make. So greenwashing is kind of where it's very hollow, so it looks good, it can make a big PR moment, but they're actually not doing anything to change the way that they're treating the planet.
I think, like, building on that, the one, Tina, for me that's been particularly challenging is the decomposition of things. People are like, "Oh, it's compostable." I'm like, "Well, to your point, kind of go back to cigarette butts. Like, yeah, you're right. In 50 years, it'll break down." And so,
Yeah.
you know, my brother helped call me out on that one day. He's like, "Yeah, but like, when is it compostable?" And I think asking ourselves those questions, right? And how do you choose different containers that are, I'm, by the way, I am the person that orders takeout, and like, I'm like, but don't put it in containers because I'm coming with containers.
Yeah. Do they let you do that?
So truthfully, I actually only do takeout currently at one restaurant, and my friend owns it. So the answer is yes,
Because that's
because
what
he owns
I
it.
yeah.
It's local. He buys local food, right? Like, it's all the things that you're talking about. And I'm like, I really want to support my friend.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And that, that's an important piece of this, right? That community that I mentioned. But yes, it is so difficult. And I find that a lot with you know, just some of the things that we've come to expect as convenient. I mean, a good example is straws. I don't know if you still have this in Canada, but so many restaurants in the US just automatically put a straw in your drink. And there is no need. And it feels awkward saying, can I not have the straw? Or I don't need a straw. But we need to, some of these things just have to be human driven behaviors. And in actually St. Louis, we have this um, I'm on the board of this environmental organization, and one of the branches of that is called Green Dining Alliance. We have over 100 restaurants that are certified, and part of that is getting these restaurants, giving them a little grant to switch to environmentally conscious way of being. But I often find even me simply saying to restaurants, you should do this, and me as a customer saying, you should take these steps, 90% of the time they do it. And so it's just simply us asking, us kind of, taking that initiative to change that behavior that has become so kind of habit based, and being brave enough to be the one to bring it up.
Yeah, so that's such a good point, that bravery piece, right? It sometimes feels overwhelming, but you're right, because you are the customer, and they actually really, for the most part, probably the places we all go to, they want that feedback of like, hey, what do you want? Like, what makes you want to come in here, right? And so, and especially if you frame it in a way that's super positive. I think, we were talking about races and, thinking about your goal race. One of the questions that came to mind for me, and I don't know if you're thinking about this, with your kids, Tina. I think about this as a coach, is like, how do we think about sustainable athletes, right? Like both from like, I'm just going to like bias this and say, in one of the big reports here in Canada from Jumpstart, the state of play last year, one of the reasons kids are dropping out of sport is time they spend in a car going to sport, right? And so, like, for me, there's a huge sustainability piece here, right? Like, I want kids to stay in sport, right? I want kids to have this opportunity to have organized and unorganized, right? Like, I want to see kids playing in the streets again and running through playgrounds and that kind of thing. And so, we strong girl talk, like we talk about young athletes. And have you thought about, as your kids are growing up, like, what does a sustainable athlete look like for you with them?
Hmm. Yeah, this is interesting because having reached the level that I did with my running, and being a visible person doing that, people often, as you can imagine, ask me, like, do your girls run? Are they good at running? Like, or they'll see them run and they'll say, oh, Bailey's got such a natural running form, or something like that. And for me, until either of them comes to me and says, I want to join Girls on the Run or I want to do the running club, I am not doing anything. And which is why my oldest does rock climbing, because that was something she enjoys. And I love the fact that she is like not following the traditional path of most kids in her class. I love that she is doing this like thing that she can do things that I watch her boulder up this wall, and my jaw is on the ground. And I did ask, who did I ask? I asked a one of my physical therapists for my foot. I said, how is she able to do this? And she was like, do not compare your adult body to a child body when it comes to rock climbing and bouldering, because I was like, I can't do that, and I'm pretty strong. But yeah, so I very much am almost maybe too far in the like chill bucket of, I do not want to push them. I want them to be driven by themselves. And I can see even within my girls that my younger one is going to be, she's very competitive, she's very driven. And so, I suspect she will come to me sooner saying like, I want to do this. I want to challenge myself in this way. And so, I am very much letting them guide me, whether that means they end up, having one sport that they love and they want to pursue, great. If they end up doing, enjoying a few different things at a very recreational level, amazing. Like, all I want, you mentioned the sustainability, that is the focus for me. I want them to enjoy it, because there's so many kids that show some kind of promise in a sport. It becomes the parent sport, and then they hate it by the time they're 15, and I just don't want to do that. So, yeah.
Very well said. Very well said. I think that's a big part of what we, want to talk about on the podcast is, yeah, how to help parents kind of navigate that and, think about that and try to have that self-awareness of, yeah, not driving the kids down a road that they maybe actually didn't want to go down, but
Yes.
we secretly wanted it for them.
Yes. And I do wonder though, because I have had that, part of me does wonder, and I'd be curious both of your thoughts on this as well. Like, because I did reach that level, am I taking it for granted of how good it feels to accomplish goals, to be like, when my daughter says to me now, like, were you one of the best runners in the world? And I'll be like, obviously the instinct answer is no, I didn't run in the Olympics, but in the grand scheme of the world, yeah, I was. And so I can say that to her, but then am I taking for granted that I actually did that? Whereas to everyone else, when they look at that, they're like, wow, that's incredible. I want to feel that way. And so maybe I'm robbing them of that opportunity, but I would like them to reach it on their own, not because they want to do it because I did it. So I'd be curious both of your thoughts there.
I just don't think you can push kids to that thing. I think that's an entirely intrinsic thing that they have to get to for themselves. It's just not going to work in that way if you're shoving them into it. So,
Although I am reading
Well,
Andre Agassi's book right now, and whew, I don't know if you two have read that, but like, damn, talk about not wanting to do something and doing it anyway. It is very interesting.
yeah.
well, he calls the ball machine the monster,
Yeah.
right? And so, like the reflection that I have, and so it's this is like the circular question,
Mm.
but I'm thinking that we probably all had parents that wanted us to thrive. That, to your point, Tina, about coming, like your daughter's coming to you. We probably had parents, like I came to my parents when I was in grade 10 and said I would like to do high level running. Mostly was to actually hang out with friends, and there was a bit of a boy in there, so like there's like
Of course.
uh, right. But I think it's that idea of there's, I always talk about like my parents held us to the standard of excellence, and excellence was like trying your best and always showing up, and you could fall and fail and all of those things and make mistakes, right? It wasn't perfection. But I suspect, and my question back to both of you is, we probably all had parents that let us come to them because we had this intrinsic motivation to do the thing we wanted to do.
That's true. Yeah, I
Yep.
would agree with that on my part. Yeah. I actually, I'd love to share. This is one of my most proud parenting things, and I'm not one to like, look how great I am, but I do really feel proud of what I figured out with my 7-year-old, and I'll say it with the 4-year-old once she starts going into school. Every day when my 7-year-old leaves me when she goes into school, I say, today is the chance to be the best Bailey you can be. And I leave it at that because I figure she can take that to mean what she wants. But then I'm telling her just try. And today, your best one day might not be your best for another day, but I watch her face light up every time I say it. Because I like to think it's motivating in the sense of like, yeah, I'm going to do my best, but it's also there's no pressure there. So,
Love that.
yeah.
Well, I'm playing. Okay, so that's some of the research I'm playing with right now, right? This idea of looking at communication, debrief, feedback through judgment or curiosity. And Tina, every day you give your daughter the gift of curiosity.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, and it's very easy to squash curiosity in kids because we've got so many things going on in our brain, and sometimes they're like, I wonder what it would sound like if I threw this mug down the stairs. And so like you want to be like, don't you do that. Da, 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 da." But like I have to remind myself sometimes like, okay, so what if they like throw bath water out of the bath? Like I'll wipe it up. Because it is quite hard to keep that curiosity going and not to squish it when there's so many things that you could see as like, oh, then you're adding another thing to my plate to do. But that's my fault, right? For putting too many things on my own plate. So, yeah, thank you for saying that.
Okay, I will absolutely make you laugh, and both of you really laugh. I'm glad you said mug because I was the child that was like, I wonder what it would sound like to throw my sister downstairs. Yeah, I was like, if she rolls into a ball, I was in so much trouble for that one. Oh my gosh. So
I
yes, parents.
I'm as bad as you. I
Okay.
smashed a snow globe on my sister's head once. So, yeah. No, I'm not really any better of a sister than you are. But hopefully we've improved since childhood in our curiosity.
I've not thrown my sister down the stairs.
I'm proud to say that I went down the stairs with my sister once, where it was like the
You
two
two
of
had a good
us, but
relationship. Yeah.
yeah.
You worked as a team.
Oh my gosh. Parents, you can all feel better right now.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. Okay, well, before we wrap up, Tina, can you just let everyone know, where they can find you, where they can follow, where they can, check out this book, all of the things?
Now I've just told them I have anger management problems.
Yeah, we'll just
Yeah.
end that.
No, I have worked on myself a lot with my anger, and I am proud to say that most of that has worked its way through. Um, you would hope so in, all those years. Yes, so I can be found. I share most of my kind of imperfect advice on Instagram at Tina Muir 88. So TINAMUIR 88. Also, if you kind of like the more professional side of things, I tend to share a lot on LinkedIn, so you can go follow along there. Um, and you did mention the Running for Real podcast, but actually, by the time this comes out, that is on hiatus. I am stepping away from that so I can focus on my new nonprofit, which is supporting racers with their sustainability efforts called Racing for Sustainability. It is brand new. We are very excited about it. And so, yeah, I just want to fully give myself to this work within environmentalism, particularly in the sport of running, but actually in sports in general. I'm actually talking to a few other different sports right now. So hopefully it is in a wider context. But yeah, the podcast is being paused. So racingforsustainability.org is where the nonprofit is. So.
Okay, amazing. And okay, before we let you go, then we have to talk about talk to us about exactly what that looks like when you are working with a race, just so, if there are any race directors listening, anyone
Yeah,
who's,
yeah.
Interested, they kind of get a sense of what this looks like.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been working with a lot of the big marathons and big races for the last 3 or 4 years, including the TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon. And I really love kind of amplifying the efforts they are doing. The big races usually have either a sustainability person or someone, in the case of the TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon of Jen Cerullo, have had someone who is very passionate about this and like goes above and beyond to do it. So I like to amplify those efforts, kind of translating these efforts to the everyday running community so that they can participate and make it worthwhile and help these races reach their goals. But I also realize that a lot of the, most races are not 25 to 50,000 people at an event. And so how can I support their smaller to medium races in their efforts? And that's where Racing for Sustainability came in. We do have a certification process that is built towards smaller to medium races. So I mentioned about community. The New York City Marathon is not going to tell all 50,000 of its participants go check out this local coffee shop, because the coffee shop will not be able to handle that. But they can, but a local race could do that, right? And really support a coffee shop, and then it become their regular where they go in often, or they become a Sasha who supports her friend, that situation. So there's a lot of advantages for smaller races. And so that's where this came in. Again, racingforsustainability.org to find out more. And then just within general, I just like to kind of amplify the efforts of people who are doing, it doesn't have to be something big, but doing their part and showing what they are doing, giving ideas to people. I kind of have become like someone who amplifies efforts that people are taking. So yeah.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and
Thank you both.
yeah, and for everything you're doing, and we will include links to all of that in the show notes. So
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you both. I appreciate the work that you are both doing, because it is important.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Strong Girl Talk podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely head over to wherever you listen to podcasts and rate, review, and of course, subscribe so you never miss another episode. And head over to stronggirlpublishing.com to check out all of the books by Strong Girl Publishing's authors, including Molly Herford, Misha Powell, and so many more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.